So you're thinking about making a move to San Antonio, Texas. In this video, we're going to go over everything you need to know, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pros, and the cons about San Antonio, Texas. If this is your first time to our channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in San Antonio and its surrounding areas, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell for notifications to make sure you're the first to get information on the current market for San Antonio, Texas. My name is Katie Powers, and my husband Steven Garza and I get phone calls from people just like you thinking about making a move to San Antonio, Texas. Whether you're 9 days or 9 months away from making your move, we would absolutely love to hear from you. All of our information is listed right below in the description. So let's dive into the pros and cons for San Antonio, Texas. Pro number one is location. Now, Texas is a large state, and you'll hear people talk about when they drive across Texas or sometimes driving from South Texas to North Texas, that could easily take 8 to 10 hours driving. So in a state so big, it's important to be centrally located to make it easy to access those other big cities such as Houston, Dallas, or Austin. San Antonio is about an hour from Austin, 3 hours from Houston, and about 4 hours to Dallas. Always depending on what part of Dallas, what part of Houston you're driving to, right? We're also right about 2 hours away from Corpus Christi. Now that is the closest beach that you have from San Antonio. Now, of course, our beaches cannot compare to California or Florida. We are definitely not white sand, Atlantic or Pacific Oceans. I don't promise that. But to have an ocean access and have a beach, Corpus Christi is great. Our prettiest beach is down at South Padre Island, which is about 4 hours away from San Antonio. Now, we're also really close to two really nice rivers. So we have the Comal River, which is out of New Braunfels, which you'll hear a lot about when you move here. People love to go tubing down the Comal River. It's a great summer activity for friends and family alike. People will post up in their tubes for hours, right? And they just travel down the river. They've got a tube for their ice chest. They pack their food, their drinks, and they just spend the day tubing the river. So you have that about 45 minutes away from San Antonio is the Comal. And then you have the Guadalupe River, which doesn't run fast enough for you to be able to tube, but it is a great place that people will go and barbecue and hang out and swim in the river, which the Comal winds, right? So it's in Kerrville, but it's also out of New Braunfels. So you're about 20 to 30 minutes from the Guadalupe River. Now, we also are close to lakes. So you've got Canyon Lake about 35 minutes away, Medina Lake about 25 minutes, Buchanan Lake, which is about an hour and a half away, and you got Austin Lake about an hour away. So the only reason why I'm bringing up all of these bodies of water is because when you're here during the summer, you're gonna wanna be near those water activities. So just really great centrally located place. You don't necessarily have to catch a flight to Houston or Dallas because you're not too far to be able to drive. But of course, if you do catch a flight, they can't even get you drinks on the plane because you're up and down so fast. So it's really like a 35, 40-minute flight from San Antonio to Houston.
All right, so now we have pro number two, the cost of living and housing affordability. The cost of living, we are about 8% nationally cheaper than other states. And nationally, we rank below the average for transportation, grocery costs, utility costs, and healthcare, things that affect our lives every single day and something that you need to take into account. So that's naturally. Let's compare San Antonio to the other major metroplexes, Dallas and Houston, For cost of living, we're roughly 11% cheaper than Dallas. And for Houston, we're about 2.5% cheaper. So San Antonio is just affordable to be in and a great city that I personally happen to love. And now, housing affordability, something that's very near and dear to my heart, right? Been doing real estate 18 years, and I've seen the cost of homes go from $75,000 to $150,000, all the way up to $1 million now, which is we're seeing a lot more in our market. But if you're on a budget, you can still get a great house for $250,000, great starter homes for $250,000. $300,000 is about the average. $325,000 is our average home sales price these days. But we're seeing a lot of 4s and 5s, and now 6s and 7s. Back when I was first getting going, my first house was $80,000 and I was ecstatic to have it. And so those days are gone. You can't really get an $80,000 house that's livable these days. But if you're still on a budget, $250,000 is doable. $325,000 is gets you a great house in San Antonio.
Pro number 3, the economy and growth of San Antonio, Texas. Now, San Antonio is growing at a rapid speed. We currently have 2.6 million people, and economists are stating that we should have another 1 million in population by the year 2040. That's really big. We're just growing really fast, and it's really attributed to all the big businesses that are moving into our market. So we have Kelly Air Force Base, which is no longer an Air Force Base. It's been turned into what we call now the Port of San Antonio. So you'll hear all of our locals mention Kelly Air Force Base. That's not active anymore. It's actually just now the Port of San Antonio. But we've got companies like Northrop Grumman and Boeing and Technica. That Port of San Antonio has just turned into a huge hub for aerospace. They've got new aerospace colleges popping up down there as well, but it's a big aerospace center. Cybersecurity has become really big here. And San Antonio is just growing with a lot of other corporate offices like Frost and Randolph Brooks Bank, and the big one, USAA. They're big campuses here, as well as QVC and HEB, which if you're not from San Antonio or for Texas, you might not know what HEB is. It is one of the best grocery stores. I'm a little biased being a Texan, but it is truly one of the best grocery stores I have ever been to. So you have the headquarters here in San Antonio, as well as Rackspace. So just really big companies that have come. They have boosted our jobs here in San Antonio, as well as the pay in San Antonio, because now we've got all these big, major nationally known companies moving into San Antonio. And one of the other great things that helps our economy grow here in San Antonio is San Antonio sitting on an aquifer. We call it the Edwards Aquifer, which means we have a water supply that's natural. A lot of big cities, that's why their economy starts to fail, because they can't continue to grow because they don't have the water supply. So even Austin is reaching out to San Antonio to help with growth because of the Edwards Aquifer. So we are really just primed for big things here in San Antonio. And being that we're still the smallest metroplex in Texas, when you compare us to Austin, Dallas, and Houston, we're growing at an exponential rate. And it's because of what a strong economy we have. I mean, we have 4 military bases in San Antonio that are active, which also keeps, jobs up and our economy moving. So the economy in San Antonio, if you are moving here for one of those big companies, is great. And if you're looking to move to San Antonio to be an entrepreneur, it's a really, really great city to start a business in.
Pro number 4, San Antonio is military active military, and veteran-friendly city. We love our military here. We've been coined Military City USA. We have 4 bases that are active currently. We got Randolph Air Force Base on the east side. We got Lackland Air Force Base on the west side. We got Fort Sam Houston, which from my uncle, I understand that he loves the PX there. He's always hanging out there, eating and shopping. And then we got BAMC, or what is now termed SAMC, San Antonio Military Medical Center. From what I understand, anybody in the military who's in the medical field has to rotate through San Antonio, which brings me to an interesting stat that I just heard. 25% of active military that do rotate through San Antonio end up retiring in San Antonio. And so that's, that says something about our city right there. So we love our military, and our city takes care of our veterans and active military. Many of the restaurants here give our military members discounts, 10%, which, if you're eating out all the time, that adds up. I know oil change places do it. So a lot of our local businesses just want to take care of our military and treat them how they should be treated. All right. For more on that, check out our Texas Veteran Benefit video to learn just how great it is to be a veteran in Texas.
Pro number 5, things to do in San Antonio. Now, there are tons of activities to do in San Antonio, some that are free, some that cost money. There's something for everyone, whether you want to be outdoors or indoors. Anybody who tells you that there's nothing to do in San Antonio has been living with their head in the ground. There's everything from Six Flags. We've got huge amusement park at Six Flags if you want to go sweat outside, right? Although during the winter, it's actually very wonderful to go. And then we've got SeaWorld and Aquatica, which is attached to SeaWorld. That's their water park. So cool. They've got a water slide that you go down and it end up going under a big tank full of stingrays. Our kids love it. It's super cool. It's a great way to beat the heat in the summer. We also have one of the largest special needs children's amusement park right here in San Antonio. It's called Morgan's Wonderland. It's absolutely wonderful. So any child that is even in a wheelchair or not, all of the rides accommodate that. It's just a great place for kids to go and enjoy the outdoors, because at Six Flags, it's not really able to accommodate all of those things. So Morgan's Wonderland is a great place. They actually just added on a water park to it as well. And it's on the northeast side of San Antonio. It's relatively inexpensive to go. Absolutely great activity there. But we also have the Museum, which is a children's museum downtown. Tons of different museums all over San Antonio. Of course, I cannot leave out the Alamo, which is what everybody comes to San Antonio for, the Riverwalk and the Alamo. But don't judge us when you go see it, because it sounds so big and then you go and see it and it's like super tiny compared to all the big buildings around it. But really cool history there. We also have the Missions down south, which is another fort. Just lots of history in San Antonio and activities. One of my favorite things about San Antonio is the parks. There are parks all over San Antonio, and within those parks there are biking and hiking trails that actually all connect. So there is 20 miles of paved trails that connect all the way from North San Antonio by the Rim, which is a really big shopping center, and it goes all the way down to the very south, which is where the Missions are. And you can bike all of San Antonio. It's paved 20 miles. We also have a total of 101 miles of trails. They're not all paved, but that is all of the trails throughout all of San Antonio, and they're interconnected. So just a really cool extra fact about San Antonio, but tons of things to do. And you have places like the Pearl, which is kind of where all the locals go to hang out. There's a culinary arts school there, and a lot of people that graduate from there go and start restaurants, specifically there in the Pearl. So some of the best restaurants are there in the Pearl. Then you've got all of downtown, the Riverwalk, which is what we're known for, which is lined with hundreds of restaurants and bars and things to do. Now, our city comes alive every weekend. There's activities downtown, and specifically in April, we have a whole month-long event called Fiesta, which is celebrating the culture here in San Antonio. So just really great things to do. I guarantee you, if you're looking for something to do individually or with a family, there is always something going on. So that is a huge pro for San Antonio, is you constantly have a variety of things to choose from to go and do.
Pro number 6, no state income tax in Texas. We love that as San Antonians and Texans, of course. Not having to worry about being taxed on income has become a very real issue across the country, right? Many people are flocking to Texas for the tax savings from other states. Texas ranks 46th in the nation for overall tax burden. So out of the 50 states, 46, that's not bad, but there is something called property tax. All right, which brings me to con number 1, high property taxes. High property taxes are a very real thing. We rank 3rd in the nation for highest property taxes. Unfortunately, it is something that you do have to factor into your mortgage. However, without having the income tax, we're still 46th in the nation overall, which is good. But if you're gonna be a homeowner, it's something that you really have to just pay attention to when you couple that in with your principal, interest, and insurance. You got to factor in that tax payment annually, which your lender does for you many times, but it is something that you just need to be aware of, that we are 3rd in the nation for property taxes. I do have an interesting story for you on that. I had a guy from Chicago come down and we were discussing property taxes, and he said he broke it down. He did his individual properties that he was interested in compared to his property in Chicago. And he said that overall it came out a wash. We were still a little bit cheaper overall. And then when you factor in all the other benefits, all the other pros, the cost of living, it makes it more attractive, which is why San Antonio is growing. My last point on the con is the tax rate. So San Antonio is roughly about 3%, a little bit over 3%. It varies throughout the city. And then if you get outside of the city into the suburbs, you're not having to pay into San Antonio, the city. So your tax rate does go down, which makes buying outside the city attractive for many. The only thing is you don't get the fire and police of the city of San Antonio. You get county and sheriff. And so it's just something you got to take into account if you're going to be buying into those lower tax rates. But having cheaper property taxes is a great thing.
All right, con number 2 is the weather. So you've heard me mention quite a few times in this video about beating the heat, right, with water because it gets so hot. So that is a big con I hear from a lot of my out-of-staters moving into Texas. Of course, depending on when they move into town, right? I've got a few clients that have moved in April, like March, April, and they think Texas is gorgeous, right? We're sitting at 75 to 80 degrees every single day in those months. It's kind of our pre-spring time frame. And so you kind of get a false sense of what the heat is here in San Antonio for a few months. So I do want to let you know, because we're all about transparency, your 3 months of summer in San Antonio is hot. And I don't mean 100 degrees hot. I mean, we break records at 110. I believe last summer in 2023, we hit a solid like 32 days in a row over 105. It was hot. It was brutally hot for even us locals. But what I will tell you is, I have heard this from all of my out-of-staters. They definitely complain about the heat the first year. It is brutal the first year, but you acclimate. After a year, you get used to the temperatures. And when it comes to winter, especially if you're coming to us from a northern or eastern state, there's no snow. We don't shovel snow ever, like ever. Even if we ice over or get a snow day, the whole city shuts down. We don't have salt trucks. We don't have the equipment to be able to handle snow. So literally, not just the kids, the adults get snow days too, because it's unsafe to drive to work. They shut down the overpasses. They even shut down the freeways because it's just unsafe since they're not salted or shoveled. So that can be a pro too. It just depends how much you hate shoveling snow. But I will tell you from clients that have moved to San Antonio from the northern or eastern states, have been super, super with our winters. And by year 2, they've already acclimated to the summers and are enjoying the outdoor activities, even in the 100-degree weathers. So that's con number 2. It's a pro and it's a con. It really just depends on where you're coming from and what you're looking for. So one thing I want to add to con 2, which was the weather, is that we don't have any major natural disasters here in San Antonio. We don't have earthquakes like you see on the West Coast. We don't have tornadoes like you see up north. Even Dallas area gets quite a few tornado warnings. Austin, north of Austin does too. And of course, central United States totally gets those tornadoes right in all of that flat land. So San Antonio is really protected from that. We don't get tornadoes. The only thing we do get is hurricanes, and they don't hit us directly, right? We're 2 hours away from the ocean, so all we do is get a ton of rain. And when we get rain, all of us are really excited to get rain. So it's really, even though it's hot, which is the biggest complaint I hear from people moving from out of state, we really are protected from those natural disasters. The worst thing we'll get is a hailstorm here and there, nothing major. And if it is major, you get a new roof out of it. So that's just one thing I'd like to add into con 2 for weather.
Con number 3, construction. With any growing city, you're always going to have construction. Unfortunately, the highway systems seem like they're always under construction. They finish one part of the highway and they just move on down to the next part, which is not really a con, but if you hate traffic, it's definitely a con. Unfortunately, construction is just a very real part of living in San Antonio. Our city is growing, but our construction is not like what you hear from up north. I've talked to many northerners in like DC, Virginia area, and they sit in traffic for 2 hours. We sit in traffic for 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. So we don't like it. We're not used to it as locals. But if you're sitting in traffic for over an hour up north, then you're not going to be feeling the effects of our construction. If the highway does close down for construction, if they're doing a bridge repair or something to that nature, it is announced on the news. And so you can follow your local news stations to see where the construction's happening if you happen to live in an area of growth and a lot of construction. So San Antonians, we're spoiled. Highway systems are great. I can get across the city without high traffic times, roughly in about 30 minutes, I can get from east to west. But in high traffic times, like 5 o'clock when everybody's on their way home from work, it does take every bit of an hour just to get across the whole city. So generally, if you live in your area, you're not traveling too far. So if you do have to get on the highway, yeah, you're going to be sitting in traffic for 15, 20 minutes if there's construction. Just kind of factor it into your day. Listen to the radio or a book in your car. And so it gets you through the traffic quickly. The good thing is we're just not sitting in our cars for 2 hours in construction. So.
Con number 4, lack of big entertainment. So I hear this a lot from my out-of-staters, which honestly, I'm a local girl. I actually grew up in the Valley, which is down south where we have no entertainment. So when I moved to San Antonio, I was actually really surprised by everything going on. So this isn't something that really occurred to me until my clients started mentioning it to me, and that is that lack of big entertainment. We don't see a lot of concerts coming to San Antonio. We tend to get overlooked. So Dallas, Austin, and Houston usually will get the big concerts. San Antonio doesn't get a whole lot of them yet. I do think as we grow, we have the stadiums to accommodate it. So as we grow, we probably will start getting added to those, concert dates and locations. We just don't have it yet. We also don't have any major sports, like we don't have a football team or a hockey team, but we do have the Spurs. And that's a big deal, especially with the last draft we had last year, getting the #1 pick. I have a 15-year-old son who is obsessed with basketball, and let me just tell you, he's obsessed with our new player. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce his name because I'm just gonna make an idiot of myself. But even our local grocery store, they do advertising with him, and they have like our ice cream tubs stacked up in the grocery store to see how tall he is. And my son gets a big kick out of that and the commercials. But that's really the big entertainment thing we have here. The only nationally recognized entertainment that we have here really is the Spurs. Now I do want to hit on, we do have some minor league sports that I have some clients that are really in love with our new UFL team. So that's a big deal. We also have a minor league soccer team, soccer club, which is actually down the road from where we live. It's actually a really nice stadium. So nice soccer team that you can go see. And then we have a minor league baseball team and a minor league hockey team, which I find so funny being how hot it is here, but we do have a few ice skating rinks. So we do have a minor league hockey team as well. So those are just some things to note as San Antonio grows. I'm sure we'll start to see bigger sports teams, but I will just kind of throw in a reminder that Texas is a big football state and our college football is huge. So we have the Roadrunners, which is UTSA, so University of Texas, San Antonio. And I did not go to UTSA, and Steve actually didn't even go to UTSA, but his brothers did. So we buy tickets. We're season ticket holders, and we go and we tailgate. And I mean, the whole parking lot is stacked with tailgaters. It's just a really good time. A lot of locals come out. So if you're a football fan, unfortunately, we don't have a pro football team, but we do have a UFL team, and we do have a great college football team. And you're only an hour away from UT Austin if you want to see some big college football games. So that's what to think about entertainment. The con is we don't have any major ones other than the Spurs, and we get kind of pushed over for concerts. But as we grow, I think a lot of that's going to change.
Con number 5 is the San Antonio International Airport. Now, nationally, San Antonio can fly anywhere, right? We got all the major airlines that will fly you across the country. The one con there is that we don't have a lot of direct flights. A lot of the locals hate it. They're coming. San Antonio International Airport is growing, but we have to suffer the growing pains in the meantime. The big con that I've heard from many of my clients that work for large Fortune 500 companies is the lack of international direct flights. So if you think about it, a layover is downtime for any employee within a company. And so a lot of the international companies have decided not to do business in San Antonio for that reason. We just don't have the direct flights. San Antonio International is growing though. We just added one to Frankfurt, Germany, which is great. The locals are super excited. We have a direct flight to Germany, our first international direct flight. You can go to like Cancun, which is only a 2-hour flight, which Katie and I are looking forward to at the end of this year. So yeah, I mean, the only problem there is, so when we do fly back, we have to fly into Houston because San Antonio doesn't have customs checkpoints. So we have to go through Houston, through their customs, and then from there fly from Houston to San Antonio, which isn't very long, but it's still jumping out of one airplane and into the other, which is a convenience, which is a con. But San Antonio International is growing, and so we look forward to that for the future. Our kids are going to see the benefit for it. Hopefully we keep adding these international flights so we can travel more often directly and not having to suffer with layovers.
All right, so our final con is con number 6, which is allergies. Now it's about a 50-50 split. You may be of the population that suffers from allergies here in San Antonio, but there's definitely 50% that look at you like you're absolutely crazy when you're sneezing and your eyes are itching. Me and Steve are a great example of the 50%. I suffer from seasonal allergies pretty bad here in San Antonio. Steve doesn't. So when I'm dying, he's just looking at me like, did you take your Zyrtec today? Because Zyrtec cures it. For the most part, most people can just take a regular allergy over-the-counter prescription and be fine. I have had a few clients where the cedar fever just really gets to them worse than what Zyrtec or Allegra or Claritin can solve for them. So they have to get cedar fever drops, which they do sell over the counter. But I am telling you, cedar is a big thing. So it smells great. They're beautiful trees, but I am deathly allergic to them. So I'll tell a funny story. Hopefully you don't judge me for it, but every Christmas we go to Steve's family's house and we have a big bonfire because yes, even at Christmas, it's maybe 60 degrees. So we are still hanging out outside during Christmas. We just have a big bonfire. And Steve's dad got really excited because he had chopped some cedar trees earlier that week or whatever. And he was like, yeah, let's put some cedar on this fire. It'll smell so good. And I was like, no, I'm definitely allergic to cedar. We should probably not. And then Steve's brother was like, oh, I love cedar. It smells so good. So they just like loaded the bonfire up with trees, cedar logs. And the next day, Christmas morning, I was so sick, and Jen, Steve's sister-in-law, was so sick. She had to go to the hospital to get a shot because she was so sick from burning all that cedar. So if you're allergic to cedar, don't burn it in a bonfire. Don't do that. It's really bad for your allergies and really just not kind to yourself or people around you. But cedar is really bad. It's seasonal. It's not year round. You also have ragweed, which is a really big thing I'm allergic to. I used to live in California and I had family in Las Vegas, and I was super allergic to the tumbleweed out there. And we moved to Texas and my mom thought, good, Katie's not gonna have any more allergies. But ragweed is a cousin of tumbleweed. So I'm allergic to ragweed too. So you just never know till you get here, but most over-the-counter drugs can fix it, but it is a big complaint to people who do suffer from it, especially for my out-of-staters who go from, Colorado and have no allergies, and then they move here and they're like, what is going on? What is all of this? You know, so that's something to keep in mind. We do in the summer have what's called Saharan African dust. Yes, from Africa, dust comes, and pretty much 95% of the population will struggle from that. It's just itchy eye, irritated throat. It lasts for a couple of weeks. It's not a big, long ordeal, but it does give us some really beautiful sunsets. I mean, the dust in the air makes some really, really pretty sunsets. So there's your positive with the con, but just something to keep in mind. You'll probably hear a lot of people talking about the allergies. It's kind of a big thing. Mostly it's cedar and ragweed and mold. Every now and then you'll see on the news, the mold count will be a little higher, but that doesn't affect me as much as the ragweed and the cedar. So something to keep in mind when you move here, always have Zyrtec or Claritin on hand. I take it year round just to ensure that I don't start having those symptoms. And on the days that get really bad, I'll take 2 just to make sure that you don't feel bad. So that is our pros and cons for San Antonio, Texas. As you can see, it's absolutely a wonderful city. Every town, every city has the good and the bad and the ugly. And honestly, there's just not a whole lot of bad to talk about with San Antonio. So I hope you found this informational. I hope you thought this was helpful for you. And if you are looking to make a move, whether it's 9 days or 9 months, Steve and I would be absolutely blessed to be your realtors of choice and would love to help you make a smooth transition here to San Antonio. So thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next one.